Hello YouTube, my name is Agent Omega, and I do things. Welcome back to Minecraft. We are here on my Create Above and Beyond server, and this is not actually going to be the series that I'm going to be doing as a result of the vote. Just to expound on that, it ended up being a tie between Minecraft and Kingdom Hearts, and in a tiebreaker, I technically get the last vote, I guess. Now, I am going to be doing Kingdom Hearts probably when one of my other series finishes, and that's because I do want to give you guys whatever you vote for, but I also wanted to get back in Minecraft because it's been a while and I actually have some ideas. That idea being my vault a day concept that I mentioned in Another Code Recollection, I believe, a while back. And so we are going to do that, but also around the corner is my birthday and the release of critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV's latest expansion, Dawn Trail. And that early access is on my birthday, so I'm going to be live streaming that for like 4 days straight. But don't worry, we're still going to keep our usual series going. I just need to preload a bunch of stuff, buffer things, yada yada. But because of that, I don't want to start a vault a day until after that live streaming weekend. And so I figured we'd just start off with a quick tour of the state of my Create Above and Beyond world, which is the server that I've been putting the most time on. So with that, let's start with my very first hideout. What I wanted to do is that this is my personal server. I think I pre-rendered the chunks out to like a radius of 300 or something like that. I genuinely do not remember. But as you can see, spawn is somewhere over here on the left side of my screen. This is just the journey? No, this is not the journey map. That is the FTB map. Do I have spawn rendered in on journey map? Yes, I do. So spawn was somewhere in here. I don't know. I wanted to find this sort of an area, and I could see on Dynmap that this ocean over here is generally where I want to build my final mega base, but I'm also still working on that in creative mode, and then I'm going to use the schematic cannon to make construction a lot easier, but it is a massive undertaking, so we're just going to tour the stuff that I currently have. So I originally settled in this village, which is like, I want to say kind of like 2/3 the way from spawn to where I ultimately want to build. And I just needed a place to stay the night. So we have this loot chest that anybody can pretty much use. Right now it's just got some flowers in it, but we've got, just some basic stuff that I picked up along the way. I need to remember to come back here and remove some of this stuff. I think this is my very first diamond too, so I need to rename that as my first diamond when I get a chance. But I picked up some AE2 stuff along the way, and I just settled in here because I wanted to make my actual first base, or my actual starter base, over here. And I don't know why, but I kind of saw this dip in the ground. I'm pretty sure it just formed naturally, and I was like, I have to make a cave base there. Like, it's just no-brainer. I feel like the default Minecraft experience is rock and stone brothers. So up top here we have our initial wheat farm. It's just a simple windmill bearing. And that's the interesting thing. I realized that you could just make a farm on a windmill bearing, and it doesn't require any extra SU, it just powers itself, and we eventually just link up and we put it into these drawers. Now, I do have some interesting things going on here with the chutes and diagonally-ness. So you can do this, you can put down a chute and then, put something in the diagonal, and it will filter out accordingly. But we're also extracting the seeds and the buddy beans that we're getting from here. I'm not actually doing anything with buddy beans yet, so they're just kind of getting voided, and I might eventually need to upgrade the storage at some point when I get into that, but that's whatever. Currently, I also have some hellbark trees growing because I use a lot of that downstairs. Turns out it's a really good source of early game infinite lava. I mean, sure, I could totally do the whole go into the nether and, just pump out a pool of lava because we have infinite lava pools or whatever, but I didn't want to do that. So, we just have a really basic startup. Eventually, I want to make this pretty. You can see that I've put in, like, just a little bit of detailing here. It's not, like, just a basic cave. We do have some support structures here, and eventually I wanted my bed to just be, like, up here in a room above the actual entrance or whatever, but this is just some initial storage. Here is where I initially had my trading set up, and eventually I'm going to put them back as sort of a museum, but for now they're down here and I have yet to make more. So one last thing before we head down. This is my initial strainer setup, which is where I got just a ton of clay and sand, and that is what helped with everything else. Now up here, there isn't a whole lot. Eventually elevator control is going to be over here. That might even be there before the next video that I do in this world, and I just realized I'm starving, so let's put some food in the offhand. So up here is eventually going to be another windmill bearing, and this is what's going to power my entire elevator. Like I said, some redstone links and various modded circuitry over here to control the elevator. I originally wanted to do a full computer craft elevator with an actual rope pulley because this is 1.16 and we don't have elevator pulleys yet, but that was overcomplicated, and I realized, I'm never actually going to finish all this Lua. Why don't I just use a gantry, which I actually came up with during one of Impulse's latest videos about using honey blocks as an elevator, which, you know, you kind of wouldn't expect that, but somehow my brain made the jump from honey blocks to let's make a gantry elevator. This first basement level is where I did the majority of Chapter 1 initially. I haven't actually connected up everything automation-wise, so like you can see I've got my kelp over here, and then I would just manually take it over in this direction, where we would make our andesite blend with these mixing contraptions and stuff. You can see we've got a bunch of gear ratios and clutches to turn stuff on and off, and I'll be doing a deeper dive into some of this later. Actually, I'll probably just do a deep dive of basement level 3, but this is my initial setup. I wanted to make this just a little bit more aesthetic by having, these stripped logs, but the problem is the Create saws have a tendency to treat these as these, and unfortunately that means that whenever I turn this thing on, it would harvest the trees and also break my aesthetic stuff here. So eventually I was going to put in a bunch of trim, but at the time I didn't have infinite zinc generation. Now I do, so I might complete that before I finish this world and, you know, release it or whatever. We do have the gantry contraption that controls it. If I were to toggle, I want to say I would need to toggle two levers. I would need to toggle this one, and I would need to toggle this one. I should really put them both on a redstone link or something like that, so I just need to toggle one lever, but I don't really care. But anyway, so this thing is a gantry contraption. It just linearly cuts down, what do I have here? 4 types of trees. And that's how I just got a ton of initial loggage, to use Rendog's terms. Now we also have conveyor systems just to make it easier to go to and from the backside. But that is basement floor 1. That is my initial chapter 1. I will be going into not these contraptions necessarily, but next week after this releases, I'm planning on doing a deep dive of my actual current factory floor setup, because it's a lot more modular and fully automated or semi-automated. The point is, it's a lot more connected than what I have currently. Now here is where I did Chapter 2 of Create Above and Beyond, and you can see that we have an automated bread maker here. I think it washes other stuff too, like it's not just limited to bread, yeah. But the intent is we have a filter here that only lets out stuff that can be cooked, and we have a filter here that only lets out stuff that can be washed. So you basically just put in your flour here, and you can see we've got a bunch of millstones over here. So you put in your flour dust over here, it turns into flour or dough or whatever, and then it gets cooked up over here, and this is where I used to make my bread, and you'll see stuff later. But this is where I ground up stuff. This is where I ground up my skystone dust to make the skystone fluid. I know I've got it in here somewhere. water. What do you contain? Oh, I guess you're just not currently active. Oh yeah, I'm not currently making that. So let's just turn this on real quick, and we'll show you what's going on. This might not make charged redstone dust just because I... Wait, hold on. I should actually turn this on over here while I'm thinking about it. Boop. There we go. So this is the initial setup to make the charged redstone dust, or charged destabilized redstone, that's the name for it, and that's just charging the Certus. And we've got a nice little loop here. I can go over that later if you like. Actually, pretty much just anything that you see in this part and you want to know how I did that, because this is like pretty compact, just let me know. I'll do a detailed overview of that specific contraption. But the video next week is going to be the detailed overview of my Chapter 3/Basement Floor 3, from Chapter 1 all the way to Chapter 3, and potentially 3A. Anyway, we've got a cactus farm here. I honestly don't remember why I made the cactus farm this early, but I think it was because I knew I needed bone meal, and I think I needed cactus for dye. I think this is my early solution for infinite slime. And it's funny because I'm actually in some slime chunks. I just don't have a dedicated slime farm here because I'm too lazy to make one. Here we also have my initial Certus quartz growing setup. Right now we don't have anything in it because I'm pretty sure all of my seeds and crystals are downstairs, but that's okay. Here we also have my initial... Are you... Oh, I should really turn you off because I think you're full at this point in time. Boop. So down below, I've got a cobblestone generator that is using fans to push it up to the top. Then it's being ground into gravel. If I turn this on, this is not currently full because I'm not really using it. But then I can put it in here, wash it up again. I have manual toggles for the washers here. It just makes it twice as fast. This is some early game filtering for iron nuggets and flint. The iron, of course, would go straight into my initial Tinker's construct setup, and this is, like, okay, but the fact of the matter is I'm doing too much manual stuff in here, so I couldn't really use this in any kind of automated capacity, but that's fine. Now, this is also where I had my initial electron tube set up, so, you know, we'd get the destabilized redstone here, we'd put our quartz crystals here, and then it would mix up into this pure Certus quartz crystal. Then it would come out here, and we'd spray molten iron onto it, and that's how we'd get our electron tubes. Anybody that's played Create Above and Beyond will know how this works pretty much. But then we also have our initial setup, and you can see that I've removed the screwdriver from here because I ended up enchanting it later, and it's more useful downstairs where we've got our full automation. But this is my initial precision mechanism setup, yada yada. I've also got some Tinker's Construct tool making stuff over there, but I haven't had to make a tool in a while, so that's why we're also not having it downstairs. Now, here is where I do just about everything. And actually, hold on, let's go up a little bit so we can get a better view of the whole factory. This is the whole factory. We've got from Chapter 1 all the way up to Chapter 3. We also have Chapter 1A and 2A currently built. Chapter 3A is going to go over here after I changed my mind on a particular design decision, and that is why we have this massive conveyor belt of inductive mechanisms going all the way over to here, but not actually doing anything right this second. But we are going to have Chapter 3A in here. So, really quickly, this is purely aesthetic. I wanted to put this drill in here so that we can eventually have just this massive tunnel down to the end portal, which is somewhere over in this direction. It's fairly close, actually. It's within like 400 or 500 blocks, so that's relatively close. And we'll just eventually have a tunnel over in that direction. And I just thought it'd be cool to put in a massive drill. If I were to turn it on, and actually we'll go ahead and do that because I don't think I'm going to show this part in depth, but if we just climb up this ladder, we can toggle U, and now the drill is on, and we also have some other cool stuff going on if we come outside. We also have our pistons and spark plugs firing, and it doesn't actually do anything. It's just a sequence of, create pistons pushing on up and down these redstone contacts. The face when you go to itch your face and you accidentally snag on your microphone wire. My apologies. And so this is purely aesthetic. It just looks cool. You'll also see that these back crushing wheels, which are just simulated flywheels. I don't actually have flywheels yet, but this just looks cool enough, and I think it fits the drill aesthetic better. And of course, if we come out the front, if we just come out the front, this entire drill also spins. In creative mode, I've tested putting stuff in front of it, and it does actually break blocks, but because this is stationary, it's not intended to really do anything. It's one of the coolest builds I've ever made and modded, and it's probably never really going to get seen. But that's okay. We'll just come up here and shut this off because we don't want lag to happen. Now, I've also included a safe shut-off mechanism here, so once it gets to the fourth one, it just stops. The piston stopped firing, and this isn't really realistic in terms of actual engine stuff, but that's okay. Anyway, over here we have our Chapter 1 set up, so we've got our kelp going into the mixed algal blend. This is stuff for Chapter 1A back here, resin being pushed into rubber, and I actually did that fairly on because sealed mechanisms are pretty nice to have earlier on. We're cooking up our bricks here, which then of course get mixed into andesite alloy. Down below we have a very effective andesite setup that just constantly dumps andesite cobblestone up here. We'll go over that when we get to that. But that is fine. Moving straight along, we also now have our deployers here, and you can see that I've compacted the slab setup here. All you really need is just to make sure that your direction of conveyor belt and also saws are the correct way, but then you can just put these filtered items on here and pump out slabs. We also have tree farm for all of our wood needs, and moreover, I have elected to, for my infinite sand and clay generation or whatever, I've also elected to automate the production of filters. And so we've got a rice farm here. These just grind up, and of course we get straw out of that, which is picked up and then placed by this mechanical arm up here where it turns into canvas. And then we feed in sticks and canvas into our mechanical crafter. So this partially came like well after I was using the upstairs filter a lot. And eventually I just made this thing, which you can see is now on a stockpile switch, so we're not just constantly running it the whole time. But this just automatically makes a ton of sand. As you can see here, we have each of the 3 types of sand, as well as clay, which again, you know, goes into mixing our algal blend, which is why we have this massive conveyor belt over there. But then we come out with our kinetic mechanisms. Back here, we split the kinetic mechanisms and we get sealed mechanisms. But then Chapter 2. Chapter 2, we have our grinding machine. It's currently off. Some of this early factory design is manual, just because I didn't realize that storage drawers, in order to get a quantity signal out of them, you basically need to put in the storage upgrade that emits a redstone signal. The problem with that is, by emitting a redstone signal, you turn off your funnels, and so that makes the upgrade practically worthless. So in order to get any kind of quantity, I've basically, in future, resorted to either using a content observer on the the conveyor belt next to the storage that I'm using, or I've put in like a buffer chest, more or less, and then used a stockpile switch on that to turn the system on or off. But you can see that this part is semi-automatic. We have levers to turn it on and off, but otherwise we can just feed stuff in. But then you can see we've got a massive Tinker's Construct smelter that just smelts iron. There's nothing else in here but molten iron. And we're doing something cool here. We are outputting the molten iron through these seared casting tables, so we're also automatically getting iron sheets, gears, and bars, in addition to, you know, just raw iron over here in block and ingot format. Now over here, that gets pumped into this buffer tank, which is freaking massive, and is ultimately used in the end product to make our inductive mechanisms again. Not inductive mechanisms, precision mechanisms. Where's the next place? Over here is the next part of Chapter 2. Actually, over here, I skipped right past it. This is where we're making our service quartz, and you can see that it's very similar to the setup we have upstairs. I've just made it bigger. And when this is running also, then we just get so much more water because, well, we'll review that during the next week's video in depth. So we've got our service quartz production here. It then goes into this mixer for the rose quartz is what it's called. And we also have our destabilized redstone. Here we have 6 times, we had 3 grinders upstairs, I think, so we've got 6 down here. It's a little bit faster. We also have this large cog wheel that makes it faster, I think, than the setup we had upstairs. And that means that we produce the dust a lot faster. We have our buffer chest, as I said above. And the nice thing about the dust is that it's an infinite cycle, so you use the applied storage skystone, or applied energistics skystone, to grind up into the dust, and it's just a stable loop. Whenever you put one in, you always get one out. And then that goes up here, gets mixed into the volatile sky solution. That's what I was fishing for upstairs, but here I actually have a buffer to show you. So that gets pumped into this buffer, which is currently empty, but that's okay because the system is not actually being used right now. And then that gets made into the destabilized redstone over here. Here we have our service quartz charging loop. It's a bit bigger than the one upstairs, but it's also got a larger throughput, which is kind of desirable. And yeah, I can talk about this in next week's video as well. Moving straight along to, I think we want to start over here, maybe? Okay, so this is actually 2A, where we're making the infernal mechanisms. So over here, we've got sort of an all-in-one grower for both types of vines. This was kind of a pain in the butt for a while until I realized that I had access to vacuulators or something. It's basically a thing that sucks up items that are dropped within a certain radius of it. And so once I had that, this became a lot nicer. Before this, I had like a fan that sucked in the drops from this side, and I also had, no, this was just as it was because it could fall straight into the hoppers. But the other thing that I was doing earlier is I was trying to do a bunch of stuff with observers triggering all of this, and eventually I decided, no, it's a lot easier if I just have a timer block to do that for me, and I think we have that going on over here. Yep. And I can also theoretically put a lever on this thing to toggle it off, but it doesn't really matter because I think we've got a void upgrade on here. So anything that drops, it just comes in here and it voids automatically, so we don't get any lag with regards to that. We also have this lava bucket blaze burner feeder. In this particular version of Create, for some reason the mechanical arm does not want to interact with the blaze burner, and so I had to do that with a dispenser. Or not a dispenser, a deployer. And then I've got like an automatic filter that takes the empty thing out, I believe over here? Or maybe over here? The point is, it takes the empty out automatically, and then it just refills it, and then puts a filled one back in here. And it's really nice. I'm getting a little too into the weeds, so please forgive me, feel free to skip around. But I also have cactus again for the dyes. I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, we're getting into Chapter 3 over here. Chapter 3 is really complicated, so I think I'm just going to save this whole part, but effectively everything in this quadrant of the factory is Chapter 3. It's a lot to talk about, but we get there eventually. Here is my favorite part. This is my automatic trading portion, and right now it doesn't have quite the extensive trades that I would like, but we have an automatic rice farm over here that's massive, and that's what I'm using to convert into coins. And then that's automatically being converted into 3 different types of metals. We have copper, zinc, and invar, or nickel. And then, of course, we have 3 Tinker's Construct setups over here. All of the lava is being supplied by hellbark trees. I really like the hellbark tree solution just because I'm lazy. Eventually, I will have a proper infinite pool, but it is not this day. And so that's what's providing my power. That's what's powering the Tinker's Construct smelteries. And you can see we've got some nice stuff here. We've got the nickel, which is automatically turned into invar. When we get to our walkthrough, this is one part of the contraption that I found really clever, and I'll elaborate more in detail. We've got a grinder here to make some more cobblestone for iron, and that's being used both to make invar and also to automatically make steel. And steel isn't particularly useful in this pack. It can be made into armor and Tinker's Construct stuff, but it's also got a lot of aesthetics uses, so like these steel frames are made of this steel. So we just have a ton of steel here. We also have brass making. It's really slow right now because, unfortunately, the way I've structured this, basically it needs to fill up the zinc, and it also needs to fill up the copper gears and sheets, and every now and again, enough copper will get through to make brass. And so that's why a lot of the coins right now are being spent on copper and zinc, and eventually one of these will fill up. As you can see, zinc is currently full, so we're getting a little bit of surplus in the compacting drawers. It will eventually be the first to fill up itself, I think. It and copper. Anyway, I'm getting long-winded again. So, the point is, I have effectively made this thing a giant grid, and if I have any presence of mind, I will show you the graphic that I made for this. I actually went and did some, used a graph theory program to help me lay out all of this stuff. And this part right here is empty for now. Eventually I'm going to put in some manual Tinker's Construct stuff. Ah, yes. These 3 were actually here for a while, but this is my latest addition. This is the grind whatever you want to put in here grindstone. So we've got an input chest, just a simple manual toggle because the system is intended to be manually input. We have a filter effectively for wheat flour and seeds. We also have the void upgrade because we get a lot of seeds that we don't need. We output the flour dust as one would expect, and then we process it like we did upstairs, except this time we've separated out the washer, the cooker, and over here we have a lava blaster, which the logic on this filter back here needs a little bit more work, because if I'm trying to cook stone, for example, it will pause outside of here and not actually get cooked into further steps. So like eventually you can cook smooth stone into these circuit plates, and basically because there's ambiguity in the recipes, it will only get cooked once, but then it will realize, oh hey, I can actually be blasted more into the circuit plates, so smooth stone gets stuck. And that's bad. In my eventual final blaster or whatever, I'm going to account for that, but that's beside the point. Now down below we don't have too much more functionality to go over. Here is just where I've been getting all of my obsidian. It's down that way. Down this way, I mean, you can see we've got some more lava pools in the background, but I actually haven't been mining for diamonds all that much, which is strange. Here we have my initial setup for Andesite Generation, and you can see that I've got a lot of storage here. I factored in having, one for each of the different types of stone that this setup can generate. And it was okay for my first setup, a little bit noisy, so I'm going to shut it off. But it just relies on a simple redstone clock and pistons and stuff. You don't want to worry about that too much until the in-depth thing. Now this, on the other hand, is my much cooler, better timed setup that, A, is spinning a lot faster, so the drill has a better throughput. I could theoretically use like an observer or something like that to make the piston auto fire. I didn't care about that, so I just used a timer. And then, of course, we are just immediately outputting the andesite, which I believe is the top right one here. Whenever we get to 64, I just liked keeping it in stacks because that's... Oh I just liked keeping it in stacks because that was nice and neat. And then we get our stack of 64 that shoots up to our Chapter 1 setup. And so that's pretty much how I've automated everything in Chapters 1 through 3 in Create Above and Beyond. And of course, I'm going to do the in-depth walkthrough next week. And I'm actually going to be recording that probably over this weekend, just because, like I said, Final Fantasy XIV, please join me for that. It would be lovely if you did. So, of course, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified. We will be doing more Minecraft on Saturdays. And please look forward to the in-depth tour where I segment each of these contraptions out into chapters so that you can skip ahead and check out how I did what I did. Of course, I'm hoping to see you when I stream critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV's Dawn Trail expansion next week. With that, I will catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching, everybody.